Over the last several weeks, there has been a rash of government activity aimed at supporting renters, but these actions could have implications for real estate investors across the board. Just the news of this alone is significant for real estate investors and homeowners and renters and pretty much everyone. But how is this going to impact you and your real estate investing portfolio? Nothing has actually been enacted, and the outline is really just a proposal. So we're going to talk about it, but just know that this video is really just covering what's in the proposal. But because it's so vague, it's really difficult to really form an opinion and understand the implications at this point. So today I'm going to look into what has been announced so far so we can understand what changes are actually being proposed. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Dave Meyer. I'm the Vice President of Data and Analytics. And if you appreciate this kind of news and analysis that inform your investing decisions, make sure to check out my podcast. It's called On the Market. It comes out every Monday and Friday. We have our own YouTube channel. You can go check it out and subscribe to that, or you can find it both on Apple and Spotify. You can also subscribe to this channel, the BiggerPockets YouTube channel, and give this video a like if you like it. Before we get into this issue, I just want to acknowledge that this is a sensitive and charged issue. I understand that. My goal here is to report on what has actually happened so far and share what both sides of this issue, both supporters and detractors of these actions, have to say about it. Our goal here is just to inform you about this issue as much as we can at this point, but given that there's not that much that we know at this point. But let's get into this. First things first, we all know that rent has gone up a lot over recent years, right? Prices for everything have gone up, but rent has honestly outpaced other inflation by a substantial amount. I think we all know we've seen certain markets that have gone up 20, 30, or even 40% over the last couple of years, which is way faster than wages have gone up, and that has created a burden on a lot of people who rent. According to Moody's Analytics, the U.S. is now a rent-burdened nation, and that basically just means that the average American household now spends more than 30% of their income on rent. That's basically budgeting experts and personal finance experts say that you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on rent, and now the average Americans are above that. So that means that according to this definition, America is now a rent-burdened nation, and this is the first time this has happened, at least far back as Moody's Analytics, who published this report, has data. Now, rent is really very expensive compared to incomes in a historical context. As I was just saying, back, 10, 20, 30 years ago, people would pay 20 or 25% of their rent. Now it's over 30%. And this is a real issue that goes throughout the economy. Honestly, if people are spending money on rent, they're not spending it on other things. It prevents them from saving money, from investing their money. And so this is an issue. And personally, I think that the lack of affordable housing, not just for renters, but also for homeowners, is a significant issue facing our country that honestly deserves the attention from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. What we know so far is that the Biden administration has basically done two things to try and react to this. They have directed the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to identify unfair practices that prevent fair access to housing. Secondly, the FHFA, which is the Federal Housing Finance Administration, they govern things like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, is proposing to consider limits on rent increases. And that is serious, but note that this is just for properties that are backed by those federally insured loans like Fannie and Freddie, which is a lot. It's about 28% of rentals. So that would have a very serious impact on the rental market. The third thing that they've told is through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, they are also planning to propose rules that put in place new eviction rules and protections. The first thing that the Biden administration did was ask these government agencies to study these issues further. So although they were saying they might consider proposing limits on rent increases, they haven't actually done that yet, and nothing has been implemented or even really proposed that is specific. Same thing with the FTC, same thing with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Basically, all these federal agencies are going to go study and learn about these issues, and then they're going to propose rules. So again, right now, we don't really know that much about what is actually going to be proposed, so it's kind of hard to react to it. The other thing the Biden administration did, other than these agency actions, is that there's an announcement of a new Renters' Bill of Rights, and this outlines a few key ideas to protect renters. They are 1, safe, quality, and affordable housing, clean and fair leases, education, enforcement of renters' rights, the right to organize, eviction prevention, diversion, and relief. Again, these are pretty vague proposals right now, but so it's pretty hard to react to whether this would actually help renters, if it would hurt landlords. It's really hard to say because right now it's just pretty vague language, but that is what has happened right now. So those are the two things that happened from the Biden administration. They released this outline for a Bill of Rights, again, with not a lot of specifics. And then we also have these agency actions that means that their agencies are going to study these things more, but we don't know a lot about it. Now, there has been a third thing that happened that didn't come from the Biden administration. It came from Democrats in Congress who sent a letter to the White House urging the executive branch to do what it can to avoid what they said, quote, is corporate price gouging. Now, no one really knows exactly what that means, but a lot of people in the real estate industry are interpreting that to mean nationwide rent control. That is all that has actually happened. Nothing has been really specifically proposed or released. They are just starting to explore these things with the goal of helping renters afford and stay in their homes. We're going to now look at what supporters of these actions say, and then we're going to also look at what detractors have to say about these two actions. First, we're going to talk about the supporters. One, a common refrain is that rent is just too high, and the government should basically explore any possible avenues for providing relief to Americans struggling to pay rent and stay in their homes. We saw during the pandemic, the government intervened, both the Trump and Biden administration intervened to provide rental credits and all sorts of different support for housing. A lot of that has expired. Supporters are saying people still need help to afford their rental apartments, and the government should really do these actions or, explore these ideas in order to see how they can provide the support for Americans who really need it. They are also saying that rent increases are impacting the most vulnerable Americans and have the potential to displace millions of people, potentially increasing homelessness or creating all sorts of undesirable situations if Americans are not able to afford rent anywhere. Supporters also say there's an inherent power imbalance between landlords and renters, and that could lead to unfair housing practices. And supporters generally just want to increase housing stability for vulnerable renters and create honest and fair applications and eviction processes. This is what supporters have to say. They just generally believe that rent is too unaffordable and it's creating serious problems in our society, and these actions and maybe other actions by the government could help alleviate those issues. Now, the detractors people who basically don't support these actions say that first and foremost, these issues of housing and rentals are a state and local issue, and the federal government is overstepping by trying to regulate housing nationwide. They also say that this doesn't actually address the long-term issues, which most experts point to as the lack of affordable housing supply, not necessarily the relationship between landlords and tenants. Many landlords also feel that some of the proposed rules could put them in a really difficult financial spot because landlords have expenses that have also gone up, similar to rent, and landlords or property owners would be disadvantaged by limitations on increasing their revenue. Landlords couldn't increase their income, but their expenses could continue to increase, which would squeeze their margins and put their businesses in jeopardy. Furthermore, landlords in many states feel evicting non-paying tenants is already very difficult. This can create obviously serious problems because when tenants fail to pay as agreed, landlords still incur expenses like taxes, insurance, and their mortgage, which landlords then have to pay out of pocket. And it's worth noting here that up to about 90% of landlords, people who own rental properties, own less than 10 units. So although there is this narrative that all of the landlords out there, these big corporate institutions, it's mostly mom and pop entrepreneurs who are trying to just make a life for themselves. And the last thing that detractors say is, although it's unclear now, as of now, like what sort of rent control might be proposed, that there is actually a great deal of research that shows that rent control is not particularly effective and sometimes has the opposite of the intended effect for addressing the problems of rising rent. If you want to check out and learn more about rent control, there's a podcast called Freakonomics, and they have episode 373 is excellent. They do a really good job of presenting the issue from both sides. In my opinion, is a very unbiased reporting of rent control and talks about the reasons and times when it works and the reasons and times that it doesn't work. So check that out. It's really good information if you want to learn more. All right, so that's it. That's basically what we know so far. And I know it's really not that much because all of it so far is just proposals and a lot of people talking about what they like about it, what they don't like about it, but there's not really that much to react to. Personally, I'm going to watch this closely, but there is just not enough to form an opinion or to extrapolate the consequences of this yet. I'll just say this. I believe that the lack of affordable housing, both for renters and homeowners, is a real concern for this country. But I hope that what ultimately gets enacted to address these issues seeks to address the long-term problems and doesn't just take the financials of one group of renters and then transfer those issues to property owners and real estate entrepreneurs. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on this and we will let you know what happens. If you have any questions about this or want to give me any feedback about this episode, please hit me up either on BiggerPockets or on Instagram where I'm at The Data Deli. I'll see you next week.